Hey there friends, it's Glenn with the almost world famous Cactus Atlas, and today I'm in beautiful southern Arizona, just miles from the Mexican border, standing in a field of poppies, about to seek out one of Arizona's most famous ghost towns, Ruby, Arizona. Now this marks one of my first road trips, I would say my first official multi-day road trip of 2024. Gonna be touring southern Arizona along the Mexican border for the next few days, and already the views don't disappoint with all of these poppies out here. Spring is here. All right, so I'm turning back onto South Ruby Road. There's two different ways you can get to Ruby, either from Aravaca, which is up the road that ways, down South Ruby Road, or there's another way that comes in near Nogales, Arizona, the border. And I'm just looking around to make sure I didn't forget anything. I've been tending to a lot of things up here. So that's on the roof, right? Yeah, I think we're all good. My expectation is eventually this road turns into dirt. When you read accounts of getting into Ruby, and one of the reasons I wanted to start the episode up the road a ways is it seems like it's probably okay for any kind of vehicle, but then there's always the slight mention, even on the Ruby website, of probably due to rain, I'm gonna guess weather, there could be some really bad times where it may become close to impassable. But looking at apps like Onyx Off-Road that I use, even though I don't really need to rely on the off-road capabilities of that today, the rating of the road is a 2 out of 10, so it's more than a 1. And a 2 usually for me means super easy, but I wanted to film it just to show you guys. Alright, so we're still winding around, less than 5 miles to go now, but Ruby, Arizona. What is it exactly? Well, it's I would say if you've lived in Arizona for several years, you've probably heard about it. I would say it's among the fairly more well-known ghost towns, although one of the most remote, and you can see, maybe you could argue difficult to get to if you're, comparing it to the likes of Tombstone or Vulture City or Bisbee or something like that, or Jerome. But what I'm expecting to see is probably something not unlike kind of the Vulture City vibe. If you're a regular viewer of our channel, we've been to Vulture City many times. And I'm expecting a mining town, an old mining town with roots back into the 1800s, although I imagine much of what we're gonna see today is from a later time when Ruby, I think, was really producing big. One of the big claims to fame that Ruby has is that it had 2 double homicides pretty close to each other in the same location. I think just a couple years apart or a few years apart. This is more, let's just go have fun and explore Ruby for the first time, and then we'll do a deep dive in that. But it did result in Arizona's, I think one of their largest, if not the largest, manhunt in state history. And it was the first time an airplane was used, or an aircraft was used in a manhunt. A biplane. This was in the 1920s when that happened. Trying to get to Ruby is a little weird. I would say their policies are a little different, I should say. I shouldn't say weird, but basically if you go to their website, very welcoming website, very welcoming for visitors, but they apparently have a locked gate, so they gave me a code. You basically fill out a form on their website, give them your name and email address. Then that's it. You submit that. They respond with an email several days later. I got one a few days ago for today. They confirmed my reservation. The caretaker confirmed my reservation, and I think her name was Leslie. So maybe I'll get to meet Leslie here shortly. Wow, that whole hillside is covered in those gold poppies. I think they're Mexican poppies. Lots of campsites here too. So being in the Coronado National Forest, there's, I assume, that's all dispersed campsites, and there's fire rings, and right off the road. I wasn't really expecting it to be as beautiful as this whole drive has been back here. I was actually, to be honest, I was not thinking I was going to be impressed at all with what I was going to see today, but so far this is right on. This is great. There's the gate.
In a quarter mile, turn right.
Alright, I'm gonna go in here and we'll figure out where to type in the thing. I have the secret code. Okay, so I got the gate open. There's a trick to it. I mean, it is the number they sent me in the email, but I guess the numbers have to just, on the little rolly thing, were just not lined up exactly right or something, so I just kind of finagled with it and yanked on it until it worked. So if you come here and you run into that problem, don't give up. But I don't have a cell phone signal, so I don't know who I would call in the event I got stuck there. So unless I wanted to walk on foot and find the caretaker and get help, that would be an option, I suppose. Now I gotta go lock it again. Anyway, I'm here to see that. Look how many buildings there are. Oh my God. Wow. Ruby, Arizona. Supposed to be looking for signs to the caretaker in here also, which I have not yet seen any. Assuming the caretaker lives in one of those houses somewhere here, but there's so many houses, it's amazing. This is a big deal for me, guys. Ruby, Arizona, my first trip. Well, so I did go check in. I think I was recording my GoPro on the top of the roof the whole time I was talking to the caretaker. Leslie was her name. She lives on the property here, and we talked at length. I had a lot of questions for her about modern times living down here, and she really told me some really interesting and kind of scary stories too. Lot to unpack about that. Need to make sure I lock my truck, and I don't even know where to start. This is a big property with a lot of buildings on it. Well, this is pretty cool. I consulted the little printout we got here, and this was somebody's home, a gentleman named Hutchinson. I think he went by Hutch, and the paper just said that Hutch had a handlebar mustache and was a very skilled mechanic, and he worked in the mill basically to keep things operational. And the mill, it's pretty clear the mill was like right back here, because it's, you know, what we usually see built up into a hill. Today it just seems like there's a lot of concrete left. And you can see on this other side, I think we'll finish on that side and work our way over there. There's houses up there, and one of the hills up there is known as Snob Hill, and I'll explain why that is a good name, but makes sense when you hear the story. But you can tell this is an older building. You got your adobe brick on the inside, a very popular technique out west here, and then we'll go inside to Mr. Hutchinson's home, see what we can find. I don't know anything about this other than what I just read. All right, hopefully there's no dead people in here. You are allowed to freely roam around and take a look, and you can see just like the kind of stuff we see all the time on the show, as of late especially. You got your plaster walls on the outside with your mud brick on the inside, and then wooden ceiling, ship tack it looks like, type of construction. And there is electricity in here. There was. There's a light bulb outlet right there. I guess I should give you a little bit of information about Ruby. We really didn't go into in depth. When you pull in here, it says Ruby was founded in 1907, although I was reading that there certainly was mining back here in the 1800s also. But primarily this would have been a 20th century, early 20th century mining town when things were booming here. The largest producer of lead and zinc in America at the time, and I was talking, or I'm sorry, in Arizona at the time, and talking to the caretaker. I think lead and zinc are used to make, or I'm sorry, copper and zinc are used to make brass. So I think they were selling what they were mining here to the government to make brass products is what she was saying. But I have heard lead, zinc, and silver were the primary minerals or metals mined here. And someone decided to put some of the heavy equipment into Hutch's home. Or did Hutch just have it on display as a conversation piece? You may never know. Here's a beautiful cross-section of that mud wall with the plaster on the outside. You can really see how thin like the plaster layer is and how much mud they packed in there. I know wasps love this stuff. I've been seeing a lot of wasps, but you can see too how over time though, it's just not that sturdy, and this whole thing's huge crack in the wall. It's coming apart. All right, the first residents did not disappoint. We have a long way to go, a lot to do. So the sad news, according to the caretaker, are the private landowners. This is private land once again. I think the original, well, not the original owners, the owners of the property today have owned this since the 1960s is what she was saying. And the parents, I guess, are getting older, probably in their 80s, and their children are taking over being the landowners. They don't plan on selling it to like a mining company or anything, but they are going to be closing it in June until further notice, according to the caretaker, which really sucks. But then I told her, boy, I'm really fortunate to have gotten down here now, huh? Don't let that discourage you though. She did say, continue to check the website, as that could certainly change. And that she's been out here for about 3 years, kind of saying, hey, you know, it's been a kind of a long run operation running the town like this. So you never know. The reason why, and once again, it's hard not to say things that will trigger people in the political discussions that are happening, and it's certainly not my intent. I'm not going to talk about my positions in any issues, nor will I even come close to revealing them to the audience. It's just too polarizing. However, that being said, this area is known for a lot of vigilantism. There are folks that will walk around. She was saying she'll come across guys with AR-15s roaming about on the private property. There are signs posted that it's private property and no weapons are allowed on the premises according to the private landowners' policy. So she's had to encounter some of these guys and escort them off the property, but they're basically looking for illegals coming through the area. And I talked to her about that also and kind of got her experience in that. So as for illegals in this area, does she ever encounter them? And yeah, she has. Not many, I would say enough to count on one hand. One died, I think, somewhere out by the main gate due to exposure, because there's really no water around here. And occasionally, the ones that come here, there's really no natural water sources around here, but they may come out and try to drink out of these little ponds, which were used in the mining operations. So they've got mercury and lead and really toxic things in them. So not a good idea to be drinking the water there. But she has had a couple come by that were in trouble, that, you know, they that nobody was causing problems or anything like that. But people come out and they get in trouble because they probably underestimated the terrain out here. It's really unforgiving. This is one of my favorite types of older construction techniques, are just the mud walls, the adobe, and when you still see it all together with the wood framing it, it's just such a photogenic thing, and it just screams ghost town. Yeah, I would say as far as like arrested decay, or probably this is decay, this is not arrested decay. I always misuse those terms, but this is pretty much, I think, just being left to the elements at this point. And that's the way I like it. But there's always the moral dilemma of, you know, should you just let it all fade away, or should you give it a helping hand? I'm not opposed to helping hands to preserve visual history like this. And there's just so many little touches left here that you don't see in most of the places we go to, like the hinges on this window here. There's panes of glass left. assuming furniture, and even the bed, and even a bed frame with paint on it. Looks like there's even someone's like a makeshift closet or a place to put their clothes. Look at that. That's nice furniture in there. That's definitely what that is. All right, I think I know what this building is, and if so, it's one that I'm familiar with and I've seen before. It's the school, and now also serves as a museum about the town, I assume. So let's go learn a little bit more than I've told you. So the roots of the school are 1916, 1917, when the Goldfield Consolidated Company was operating the mine and the mill. And so this dates back over 100 years now. So they do have this room barricaded off, but you can still get a really good look at it. You see the original, where the chalkboards would have been. Construction techniques of a different time. All right, looks like there's a way to go here. Just need to keep the door closed. Oh, look at that. It's very nice in here, and it's a very appropriate place, I think, for a museum, the old schoolhouse. This is awesome. Not as much on display here as other places. I think Vulture City, their museum's a little bit more robust than this, but there's some really cool artifacts you can see here. It looks like the top of like a salt shaker, maybe an old iron and old mason jars. I'm looking for dates to see if I can date anything. I don't know if there are on there. I read online that you can sit in the original desks that the students sat in, and the real question is, can I fit, or would I be better as the school teacher? There's all sorts of fun little touches in here. You can see list of birds if you're a bird watcher here, and next to the mining paraphernalia, and the Montana mines, I believe, are the mines here at Ruby. There's Montana Peak, I think, outside. We'll see if we can spot it, but this is an awesome little diagram here. I don't know where the surface access is. I'd have to study this carefully, and it's really tiny writing, but this is all what I would assume is underground here in Ruby, the Montana mines. You have some old photos here too. Of the town. Here's a good one of in the 1930s, which is when I read this place was probably in its most productive years. So, you know, but there was stuff here prior to that for sure. But you could see how big the town was, and we're really only seeing a portion of what remains today. I want to say Ruby was also known as Montana Camp by miners, and I think Ruby was the name of the wife of the person that opened up the first post office here. But you can see that's the mill, I bet. There's a big head frame up there. So the mine is gonna be somewhere up where I thought it was, because the head frame would have been, it's probably somewhere like right up there, I'm gonna guess. And there's the big mill. I think most of that's not there today, but we parked somewhere down in that area. And it's kind of cool to see an overhead of the town. Look at that old timey car. It's a different time and a different place. Piano back here too. Unplayable. (1892) or established 1892. The Chickering Brothers, Chicago. And some old lockers and these showers. I bet you these are old showers or something. Oh, looks like it, doesn't it? Looks like they're renovating some of these other rooms, probably for different grades. All right, so that's the old schoolhouse. Might come back and spend a little bit more time in there, but there's another building that I want to see up the way. It might actually be the one the caretaker is actually staying in. And if it is, it's where some grisly stuff happened twice. Okay, so there's your school where we came from. And then up the hill, I want to say, is the store that I'm looking for. And over here was the previous location indicated by number 10 here of Casey's Place, which was a little lunch confectionery business. So if you wanted to grab a bite to eat back in the day, in the olden times, you could see, probably in the 1930s. Okay, so as we seek out the more grim side of Ruby history where murders occurred, it's important to understand the context, which I'm going to be going in more deeply in the other video, but needless to say, being about 3 miles away from the Mexican border over there, 1910s through the early 1920s were a very turbulent time in Mexican history. That was the Mexican Revolution, the time of Pancho Villa. And all up and down the border were the bandidos that you hear about. And some of these Mexican bandidos came up here and murdered the caretaker or the shopkeepers for the general store here in Ruby on 2 different occasions. 2 entirely different murders. You get a good look from up here. That's Montana Peak, I believe. That makes sense. And the Montana mine right up there. So underneath all of that, underneath the ground, would be the mines of Ruby. And we're up on what the caretaker told me was called Snob Hill. And you could see the house that we came on was a judge's house. And I want to say other people like doctors lived up here. So this was the more affluent section of town. And even that house up there, which she says you have to bushwhack to get up to, is included among those here on Snob Hill. And we'll go into this house. She says we can actually go into this one and check this one out. All right, let's go into one of the Snob's houses. This is the Morton house, number 6 on the walking tour. And let's see what that is. It was Earl D. Ed Morton and wife, Annie. It is Snob Hill, and he was the general manager, I think, of the mine, and his wife was a homemaker. And he also ran the pool hall and hosted frequent bridge parties, but I don't see when this house was built. So we'll presume 20s, 30s, something like that. It's in fantastic shape considering the age, and very similar techniques. It looks like construction techniques, that ship tack on the wall. Didn't see any adobe brick exposed. This may be a slightly newer building, I would guess. I bet you this is 1930s or something. You can see there's old tortoise shell here and just random stuff. Yes, you would have a kitchen here. And look at this, somebody may have lived here, I'm guessing in more modern times, because, I mean, that's not the fanciest counter, but that, I don't know, I've never seen a counter like that in a home from the 1930s yet. Doesn't mean anything, but you never know. Maybe they were truly the snobs. Interesting color choices too in here. And you got your old heater here, betraying the age, and there you go, behind the wall. Looks like maybe there was some water damage, I guess, and it's exposing what I assume is adobe, like in mud. Oh yeah, for sure. So once again, you got your mud house here. And it looks like, I don't know what's up, if there was a fireplace there or what, and they ripped it out, or what the deal is here. But I was told that it's not uncommon for these to go into chimneys, so I would expect a chimney on the top of the house, most likely. All right, I'm deciding to unpack this a little bit differently. I was reviewing the info. Actually, I think that might be right. I think both stores that I'm looking for might be on the way out, closer to where the school was. I got kind of messed up there for some reason and disoriented. So I thought what I'd do is come down here to where my truck is, where my drone is, and we'll go check out the mine and the mill, and where I think the mine is. Maybe we can look down a deep pit. There's something here. That's not anything of interest really. This broken wood, and we'll see if we can peer down a pit. It's a great place to survey the town. You can see Slim, my white truck parked down there. Schoolhouse is over there. Snob Hill is over there. And then the mining operation proper appears to be right here. Let's see what we can find. As with many mills we've seen, all that's usually left are the concrete foundations, although there is still some wood strewn about the ground over here. But on that picture I showed you earlier, I think this all would have been covered under a roof. Let's see what we got here. This is quite a treat. There is a lot left here, a lot more than what you would normally find in places like this. See, there's probably a workshop in this little area. Their tools and bolts and stuff would go in those little cubby holes probably, and all sorts of artifacts. All right, there's more structures over here, really old looking ones. Another one up there. That looks like an old one. I mean, I'm saying that in this place, everything's old as far as I'm concerned. You can see here's the tailings, the waste rock. She called these tailings. So, I don't know if they're that or waste rock. Like it looks black, almost like that slag I've seen before. But we'll give you a quick pan of what's left of Ruby today. Now this is interesting. Are these adobe bricks on original pallets? Like they were preparing these and they never used them and just left them out here. That would be a first for me if that indeed is what it is. And how would this survive that long? I mean, I don't want to contribute to erosion. I mean, that's pretty hard though. It's almost like concrete. It does flake a little bit, but it's harder than you might think. This is an old warehouse, and looks like we can at least peek in windows in here. And you can see that adobe brick once again. Same exact construction technique as everything else. Makes me think it was all built around the same time. Wow, there's a lot of material in here. Kind of doing my best, reaching my arm in through the window, trying to get a smooth shot. But blast from the past, huh? And here's some proof, the head frame hoist and mine. As we saw in the picture, this head frame would have been taller than that back in the day, but you know, that's really cool to have anything left like that that's made of wood. As I've shown you guys, hopefully on this channel, finding things like this is increasingly more rare, and why these sites are so important. So we saw a head frame. I bet the mine's right here. Look at that. Look at that. There it is. Woo! It's dark in there. I can't see with the sun shining like that. I don't know if you guys can see anything down there. That's the mine. That would be the mine shaft. Feel cold air coming out of there too. Feels nice. It's like natural air conditioning. All right. It's time for my obligatory rock toss. See if we can hear the bottom of that mine. Find an appropriate specimen to do this with. Right here. This is a scary one. It's it's so bright right now I can't see far. But let's get this positioned here. And here we go. I heard noises for several seconds. I hear, you know, the rock probably banging off the sides of the mine going down until I just didn't hear anything more. So I don't know if it hit bottom, if we could hear it. Is there water down there? Are the mines flooded? What's the status? Is there still stuff to mine in there today? I don't know. And you can see there's the mill number 22, or what's left of it. This whole thing would have been a big roofed structure, as we saw in the picture. Probably the biggest structures on the property, I imagine. And then whatever the heck that was that someone's home or maybe a mining office of some sort? And how do you get up there? Looks like people just kind of go right up here. We got to. Well, I'm glad I came up here because this is the old assay office, number 23. And this one's all wood. I don't see any adobe on this one. So I don't know if that means it's an older structure. I take it back, I do see some adobe. You can see, really, this is the best view of the town we've had all day. Of course, I do have the drone we can get going, but if you want a nice picture and want to see the area, come up by the old assay office. Wow. Just imagine being back here 100 years ago or more and just hanging out while people were doing their assaying. And look at this. This thing is definitely on the outs. That frame is crooked. The roof is crumbling down on the other side. So it's only a matter of time, I think, before this one comes tumbling down. Hopefully not today. A cartographer, like an underground cartographer, I assume. Here's a look back at the mine. The head frame's kind of hidden behind a tree. You see the warehouse, the mill, and then the assay office up on the hill with the Montana Peak in the background, or what I assume is Montana Peak. And then that leaves this little section here of what appears to be more residential homes, starting with number 19. I assume a home belonging to a Duff family. But this was I think the guy that lived here was an anesthesiologist and a superintendent. And now it's just a quiet facade with nobody left to tell the tale of what life was like here up in these beautiful hills near Mexico. This is one of the more rickety feeling homes. The floor is very bendy. You feel the age, and we can kind of study. I mean, these just seem like nice homes for the time. This is a little bit different of a material. It just feels like some kind of like plywood almost. And then I don't see any adobe on this one. You can see all these places have attics. I don't know how recent the roof is, but this reminds me a little bit of the Vulture City discovery we made. Look at this. Remember that, Amy? Another chimney without a fireplace, but that's because these places would have had some kind of a wood stove or something that would have connected up and out. All right, I see my first electric outlet of the day, and it is a 2-prong outlet. So this house did have electricity prior to the 1960s when they were grounding and they started adding those 3-prong outlets. It's my latest thing I've been looking for on all of our adventures. And you can see pipes in here, so they had water. That's probably a little bathroom in here. There's a light switch also. You can actually see, I don't know if that's the pattern of this wood, if it was painted in a pattern, like a floral pattern or something. Like, it's not a wallpaper. And the switch still has give after all these years. And then the kitchen and lots of rat poop as always. You know, we're not quite done yet for this episode, but the main thing I want to do is when we head out, I'm going to go find those general stores, plural, the 1800s one, and then the one with the infamous murders, and we'll tell you a little bit about the story, but I'm not going to tell the whole detailed story, but I know people like stories of murder and death, so figured I'd provide that for you today. And you can see whatever this building is, I don't see a numbered sign on that one, as a good example of the fate of all of the buildings here if they don't get any TLC, mainly because these walls, you know, there probably was another mud wall on this facade, and I've seen it so many times, they just come eventually crumbling down in one fell swoop. And I wouldn't be surprised if the piles of bricks that I saw aren't necessarily leftover surplus bricks. It's probably from a cleanup effort here. Once that wall goes, I mean, so does the ceiling, you can see. Very Vulture City, circa early 2000s. This is really a good example of what you deal with there. And then right next door, for whatever reason, probably made it in the same era, same materials, same techniques. This one is in remarkably good shape for one of these old adobe mud structures like that. It is missing chunks of wall. But, you know, it's rare, so rare to see these types of things intact anymore. I'm just very thankful to be able to capture and at least document it in its current state for the future. Just in case, you never know. Like the lady said, if they decide to close it down one day, you know, people may not be able to come in here, or if there's a fire, or when buildings come tumbling down, which they will eventually. We've caught it for the ages here. Another small little room, like a one room, maybe a miner's quarters. See an old fridge in here? The brand, by the way, on that is Serval. I've never heard of that brand, so that might give a hint as to its age. It looks old. It doesn't look like a modern fridge by any means. Another curiosity I have is, were the adobe structures like original, were those like 1800 structures when they first started mining the area and few people were here, and then they'd come in later and plaster over them and repurpose things? That wasn't uncommon in the West, and I've heard of ranchers disassembling wooden structures and relocating them, so who knows, maybe some of these date back to the 1800s and were built over later. My best guess is you're probably looking at 1920s, 1930s handiwork. Here's a nice little photogenic piece of wall. I love that adobe with backgrounds like that. To me, that might be the photo op of the day, one of them. Maybe come over here so I can get a better look at the Montana Peak, as the lady called it out. For some reason, this might be my favorite structure of the day. I don't know why. I like complete structures usually, but there is just something photogenic and, I don't know, something about it. It tells more of a story to me than the intact ones do. That sounds dumb. It doesn't make any sense, but there's a truth to it. As for what's left, I know there's a jail, and this kind of has the look of those old jails. It's not like this was a huge city, you know, 1,200 at its peak, so you'd have some crime and problems, I'm sure. But you really didn't need a huge facility usually. Probably one room like that is sufficient. Looks like my second guess was correct. This is where they would have had a safe. I assume this is after they processed the ore. I don't know if they were creating bullion or how it came out, like in bars, but I'm guessing this is where it was stored in this like huge concrete slab of a safe. Probably with a door, probably a safe in here, I guess. And it's actually really nice and cool in here. A lot of wasps' nests, but they look like they've been tended to. All right, I decided to kind of drive back up towards the entrance. We're going to be leaving here shortly ourselves, but the stores, the general stores, the original one and then the later one, should be right up here, I believe. Like I said, this is the somber part of the story. And one of the things that Ruby's really, I guess, unfortunately known for. are the murders that occurred here. I want to say, ironically, there's a jail over here too. That might be the jail. So we'll see. This is kind of funny. This jail is from the 1930s, so 1936. And it cost them $600 to build, I assume in 1936 currency. But the deputy sheriff basically was asked, what did you guys do before the jail? And he said they just chained people to the trees and let them cool off. I don't know of any anecdotes or anything associated with the jail, but wow, look at that. This is cool. I'm gonna guess you can't go in there, and it's pitch black in there. So I don't know if that was the original design, no windows or not, and just pitch black in there. I'll take a peek around the side, but it's kind of freaky if that's what it really was. And you don't really see these sorts of structures too many times with the door still on it. Usually if you find these things, it's just a concrete cube at this point. So it's really neat to see it just for that, I would say. We will take a walk around the side. Oh, there's a little window with bars on it even. Look at that. So they did have light in there, but it's boarded up now. So that's why it was pitch black in there. But looks like the prisoners did have at least one window. I don't know if there's one on the other side. I would guess there is. At least that would have been a better view for whoever it was. Otherwise, they would have been looking at the side of the general store the whole time. Yeah, this I believe would be the newer of the two, or the third store built in Ruby, where the two murders took place in February of 1920 and in August of 1921. I'm guessing there was a side entrance over here, and then this would have been the whole facade that would have said the Ruby Mercantile. Now, this was not the first store here. There was one in the 1800s, and then I think that was the only building here for a while servicing miners in the region. And then eventually a gentleman built this new store. There was an attached apartment in the building. Then he sold it to someone new. And I want to say within 11 days or something like that, the first murders happened with the brand new owners, just days after having bought this place. So in February of 1921, at this very location, two Mexican bandits came here, shot the two owners, the people that were here running the store at the time, and cut the telephone lines to the town, and I think stole money, cash, and left. And then one of them, I believe, was later apprehended, and the other one never was caught, and his whereabouts were never known again. Likely in this vicinity, I would imagine, is where that one happened. And then the second one also would have happened here inside of this building. And I guess you could say coincidentally, although I still think you have some of that context that I told you about. And once again, two Mexican criminals, bandits, are responsible for the second murders. And at that time, I heard the wife and the husband were out riding on horses somewhere in this area. They saw a couple Mexicans off in the distance, and they came back to the store to open up the store for them, thinking they needed something. And then they came in, I think asked for tobacco, shot the husband in the back, killed the wife. There's a lot of details to this that get pretty gruesome. I'm gonna save that for the other episode, but needless to say, two armed Mexican bandits came in here, murdered the parents, and then they left. And then from there, I'm basically just trying to get you all buttered up for this other episode I want to do that's more in depth. But basically, those two were apprehended, but then they escaped because the police transporting them wrecked their car, and the police officers died, ensuing in, I think, the largest manhunt in Arizona history, or maybe at the time. And it even involved the first time they used a biplane in a manhunt here in the state of Arizona. So imagine that. We're biplane days, olden days, when this all went down here. It's really eerie to think, though, that the people that were murdered here, their hands may have touched and worked with the very artifacts that we're looking at right now. This is, what is that, PF Rimmer 2? What is this here? Walter S. Primfer, a mining engineer. This would have been his house. Kind of looks like that old 96 ranch, and you can see the actual people that lived here. Wow, how cool. We'll walk right through the guy's home. All right, folks, there you have it. Ruby, Arizona, our first adventure here. Hopefully not the last. Hopefully they don't close it up like the caretaker said, but such a fantastic place. I would say this does rank up in the top tier of ghost towns in Arizona. A must-see if you're a ghost town aficionado. Thanks for joining us on this episode today, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.